Not as cool.
Not as cool.
Did you say that you had to be there in Italy for it? The online training?
I was giving the training.
You were giving the training. It was online.
It ended up being online instead of me being in Naples.
But you could have been like, the only way for me to do it online is
if I'm online
in
Naples.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't going to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was for the U.S. Navy. So,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah.
What for the U.S. Navy?
For the people who work with, like people who do counseling for the naval.
Okay. They have
People.
like a...
They have therapists and stuff. Civilian people. So it was a training for them.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah.
That would be really fascinating to understand. We're recording, by the way.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to get all my respiratory issues out.
We'll have a little party the day you don't have to clear your throat.
I don't think that's going to happen.
It's not going to be a thing.
We're not going to have that party.
I would be really fascinated to like learn more about what the military's mental health offerings are like, and like if that's something that's not sought out but like used. I would assume there's way more stigma in the military than in everyday life, but who knows?
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on your commanding officer and how much they support mental health stuff.
Yeah.
And order it and stuff. I don't know.
So when you gave that online class, what was it about?
It was about this work that I do with couples on the brink of divorce, discernment counseling.
Okay. And then that's meant for the people in the Navy who are having issues with their,
issues, yeah.
So it's not necessarily for them. Well, I mean, I guess it is, but that's cool.
Yeah. So how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I still get a little anxious. I was sitting on my couch waiting for you to get here, and I was like, oh, gotta get ready. So it's still like, I get anxious for these.
Mm-hmm. Do you get anxious as somebody who's sitting down about to have therapy, which you would know are those the same feelings you get when you're with George, or do you get anxious about, okay, we've got the dance monkey dance?
The dance monkey dance, because
I don't know. I don't know how we're gonna get away from that.
I don't know. I'm kind of like okay with it in a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just is what it is. It's more of like performance anxiety, which is fascinating. But other than that, I'm good. I haven't been sleeping very well, which is I'm attributing it to kind of recovery from New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a party. My fiance's friend's boyfriend was having basically a house party. So it was kind of like I got to step into a time machine and like go back to college.
Uh-huh.
There was like a beer pong table set up in the garage and just a bunch of people standing around it. It was a very interesting moment. But we were up till like 1 or 1:30, which is late for me.
Yeah.
And I consumed alcoholic beverages, and without fail, the recovery process for me takes like a week, and it disrupts my sleep.
Yeah.
That's like the last sign in my recovery journey is the sleeping. Like
when you say recovery journey, like
so here's how it goes.
Detoxing from what you took in? Or?
Let's assume I drink on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Sunday, if I am hungover, which in this case I wasn't really, I was just kind of exhausted, but I probably had 6 to 7 drinks throughout the night, which, so I wasn't particularly physically hungover, but if I do have one, it would be the day after on Sunday. Monday, I'm just exhausted. That's when I'm like, oh, I'm so sleepy. Tuesday, I'll have had a good night's sleep. However, I start to feel like everything is awful. I'm in danger. My company's crumbling. Nobody likes me. Tuesday, that gets a little bit easier on Wednesday. And then Tuesday night and Wednesday night, I will wake up a ton during the night. Typically have like nightmares. So for example, I think it was Tuesday night, I would told Haley in the morning, I had 2 back-to-back nightmares about our upcoming wedding.
Mm-hmm.
The first was that we had accidentally told everyone the wrong date. So we all showed up to the venue and we were 6 months too early.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And the second one was that we were having the wedding, but we didn't plan it out. So it was really late. Like we served dinner at 9:00 and I was in another city for some reason. And Haley was calling me like, hey, dinner's at 9. You got to get here. So I was trying to get on a plane to get to where. Yeah. It was very fascinating. And then the third nightmare was that there was a nuclear attack and I was living in a post-apocalyptic world. So it just shifted suddenly.
Yeah.
So that was Tuesday night. Wednesday night, I woke up a bunch too. And I'm hoping today, like I'm a little tired, but I'm going to sleep well tonight, according to the schedule.
So you don't see those dreams connected at all?
For Haley's sake, I hope not. She's probably like, I hope he doesn't think getting married to me is an apocalypse. I don't know. I never thought about that.
No, I was just kidding.
Yeah.
That's
because that's the cliche, like, joke of like, tell me about your dreams. Or you meant like, hey, getting married in apocalypse.
Cliche. I mean, if you're putting those things together at all, if they're related to your, detoxing and coming back from having too much to drink or something, I don't know.
Yeah. So all this is a long-winded way of saying I've been a little tired this week. But I've been going to the gym.
Uh-huh.
That's been going well. And that's helping, and I hope to continue to do that.
So in the past, we've talked about, you shared, maybe the fourth time that we met or the fourth podcast or so, you talked about your alcohol use and an incident you had early on in your life. And we talked about the fantasy football and how everybody kind of shows up, they drink too much, and there's a moment of regret when people are kind of all heading home. And so anyway, so now I'm thinking about when you're talking about drinking this time, I guess one of the questions that came to my mind is you've talked about dissociation and feeling like a part of your brain is not there, a part of your mind is not there. Mm-hmm. How does the drinking impact that part of you?
That is a good question. I don't know the right answer.
There's no right answer.
I know, right? That's mastery, Alex, kicking in here. I guess I just notice it less. I don't think about it, which was always my struggle with my relationship with alcohol. That element was always attractive to me, not thinking about stuff. Alcohol represented me not thinking as much about things.
When I had enough to drink, I didn't have to think about things.
Yep. Which is ironic because I'm about to say what I thought I liked about drinking was that it turned part of my brain off, which that's one of
your concerns
with dissociate. Yes, I know. Literally right before I said that, it clicked in my head like, this is going to sound kind of ironic.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is why I started drinking. That and like peer pressure, all of my friends were doing it. Mm-hmm. I remember when I first drank, I really didn't enjoy it. I was like, this is dumb. But I told myself like, well, I got to do it. Everyone else is doing it. Just got to suck it up. All that aside. So it's not like, I mean, obviously in theory, I would be more out of touch because I'm under an influence, right? But I just either don't think about it as much, don't care. So yeah, I think when I go through withdrawal and like detox and my body's detoxing, I notice it way more. And that could be because of anxiety. Who knows? Mm-hmm.
So when you said you had this New Year's party, you had 6 or 7 drinks. So I'm tracking that. And driving, not driving, or how did you make decisions around that stuff?
So great question. Being the responsible adult that I am, Haley offered to designate drive, which is great because I really appreciated this. But like I said, we're in this garage and there's probably like 30 kids down there around this table playing basically a game of quarters, but with ping pong balls and cups. And Haley was like, well, I'll play, but I can't drink. So Alex will just drink my beers.
Oh.
And it's not like I even had to drink that much because she never lost. But it just was funny that, she's an introverted person, but she just like threw herself in. We knew no one going to this party. We knew 2 people. And she just kind of jumped into the fray and was like, yeah, sure, I'll play. And all that aside, yeah, Haley drove us home. It was Haley's little brother, and myself. Yeah, that's like, I mean, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, kind of a thing. Like that's,
yeah.
I ain't ever going back. I told,
yeah.
If you remember that throwback, I looked at all those people at my table and I said, guys,
it's gonna be you.
You figure this out amongst yourselves because I'm not coming back here. Yeah. So Haley drove us.
Yeah. Okay.
Which, she's a wonderful driver. I was thinking about making a joke about like, well, what's more dangerous, Haley driving or, but I decided that might not be the most appropriate joke to make. So I didn't make it. But there's crickets noise somewhere on this soundboard. I don't know where it is. Yeah. And I definitely felt like I knew I wanted to bring that up to you, but I also was worried that maybe you'd be like, well, I thought you said you don't really drink anymore. Like, and so I found myself getting a little like, okay, well, I'll explain to him how this is very rare and, it was within my control, blah, blah, blah. But like, that also too feels a little bit like, okay, I think everyone would say that.
Yeah.
I just didn't want you to judge me.
Well, but I think that's one of the things, that feeling like I don't want to be judged. I mean, I imagine people confront that all the time with going to a therapist, telling a stranger your story, whatever it is. Or
I think for me personally, the inner dialogue is, I want my therapist to know that I'm thinking about it or that I'm aware of these like potential concerns or things like that. I guess I want them to know that I'm like maybe being a little responsible, but I'm being responsible as opposed to it's totally off my radar. I'm not even thinking about it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. It was a great party. It's probably like 50 people. Right before midnight, they had a trivia game.
Okay.
And it was me, Haley, and Haley's brother, which like, they didn't stand a chance. Everyone else.
Wow.
We smoked them.
Wow.
But that's just because I had 2 like super nerds on my team. Like Haley's brother is probably like just,
Trivia king.
Yeah. He was getting so excited after every question. He just started going, yes, trivia. It was this weird combination of like bro culture, but for trivia.
Okay. Yeah.
And where they intersect. It was very fascinating to me. But I had a lot of fun at that party observing him because like he's a pretty quiet guy. And he's a nice kid. And at that party, he definitely like let loose a little bit. And it was fun for me to see that. Like he was socializing. At one point, I told his parents this, but at one point we went out down in the dock. The house was on Lake Minnetonka. We went down on the dock to celebrate the New Year. There were little fireworks and whatnot. And I turned around, and all of a sudden, her brother was just surrounded by 5 girls, and they were all talking to him. And I was like, wow, like, hey. I brought that up to him. It's like, just smooth operator over here. And he did one of those like bashful kind of laughs kind of a thing. But it was pleasurable to me to see him have.
How old is he?
He's younger. He's like 23, I think. And he just joined. He's an officer in the Navy.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So he was home for a little bit, and then he goes off, and we probably won't see him for, like 6 to 8 months. He might not be at the wedding. He probably won't because he'll probably be on
a ship somewhere.
Yeah. Yep. On a boat. But it was fun to see him having a good time and talking to people and dominating trivia. So yeah, that was my New Year's. And
are you making resolutions? You know, a lot of people talk about making resolutions, and
I have a
new leaf and stuff.
I have a Google Doc. I have a sheet.
Yeah,
and it has it's really broken into 3 categories. One is my business and how I want to grow it. 2 is advancing kind of my career as a writer and a director, how I want to do it. And then 3rd is like personal health, relationships, stuff like that.
Okay.
And I know we talked about this a little bit in one of our previous sessions, but like I think that I continue to be a little intimidated by or overwhelmed by, like, you know, it's like the new year, so got to improve, got to be better than last year. And like I find myself looking at my quote unquote success objectively and like, did I accomplish much in 2022? Should I be embarrassed of myself? Should I be proud of myself? And that is always uncomfortable, that kind of inner dialogue.
You talked about a lot of it being dependent on how much money you're making, like the worth, right? What worth do I have? What worth do I bring to the world?
It's either money or it's all superficial stuff. It's either money or like, I guess you could call it like eyeballs. Like, is it getting shared? Or people talking about it? Or you know, news articles getting written about the work? It's like just 2 very superficial metrics. Yeah. I know, which like I don't like that I do that, but it, for whatever reason, my brain defaults to that, or there's a voice that defaults to that. Which I'm sure a lot of people could relate to. But there are times like when I work with George, when I express these kinds of concerns, it's almost like he's kind of like herding sheep, because he'll just slowly like, well, what did you like about those projects? Why'd you do them? What did they mean to you personally? And then slowly but surely I'll remind myself, like, the work that I do has value to me. And that is fulfilling. Right. And I can focus. I can stand to remember that and focus more on that. How about you? You got any 2023? Do you do the whole, I'm going to give out 75% A's this year? And
so is it important for you to know about me?
No.
That's a therapist question, right?
That's great.
We're not supposed to focus on me in here.
No, I mean, you know, it's not important to me. No, not at all. I could care less, Dr. Steve.
So I always answer the question. Like when clients ask me about myself, I always answer the question. But then I ask, you know, what do you get in knowing that about me? So, my New Year's goal, my New Year's resolutions are always around health and fitness and stuff and weight loss. And
sure,
I grew up a real obese kid.
Did you?
So it's always in the back of my head.
Wow, I wouldn't have guessed that. Well, I guess why would I have guessed that?
Yeah,
that's cool. Good, congrats on that journey, because you seem pretty fit.
It's always a journey. It's always in my head. So, what does knowing that do for you?
Not to make you feel bad, but it makes me feel a little bit better knowing that, like, hey, you have things that you constantly think about.
Always working on.
Yeah.
Right. Totally.
And that makes me feel a little bit better about, like, maybe my thing will be, I'm always going to be thinking about success. Do you look, so like where my mind always goes is I'm aware of this thing I'm always working on, and I get mad about the fact that I'm always working on it.
Yeah.
Because, and maybe this ties into like our discussion on mastery, but there's a part of my brain that's like, you should figure this out eventually. You're smart enough where you can figure this out eventually.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it goes to the discussion of mastery, and is there an arrival spot? So for me, and body image, and you know how I look at myself and stuff, I don't know that there's ever an arrival spot, because then if I looked at the entirety of my life, there's this blip where I was this obese kid, and all the messages that I received about being heavy and overweight and stuff are I carry them with me. But most of my life, That's not the story. And I can see that in pictures, but when other people look at me, they say I don't have that image of you, and I can't believe that. I mean, they don't believe it. But that was me. That was, I have these images of this deficit version of myself, and that it's so hard to shake. And so finding people and places where you can be accepting of yourself is really important. It's where it doesn't nip at your heels all the time. But I think that's part of human nature is we are our worst critics, our harshest critics, and how do we give ourselves how do we show up for ourselves with a little grace?
Yeah.
How can we be more accepting? Because I'm sure I treat myself worse than I treat anybody else around those things that are my issues, right?
Yep.
The other thing is, I think just being in this world, in this business of self-improvement and trying to get to a better place with how I feel about myself, the therapists are not immune from that journey. We're all on it. We haven't got it figured out. And I think that's one of the things I want people to know about going to therapy is your therapist doesn't have it figured out. They're still trying. Yeah. They're still trying to figure it out.
I think that's something that I, as your podcast patient, I forget that. Mm-hmm. And I always default to being like, okay, well, this person is the expert.
They've got it figured out.
They are, it's like when you look at a doctor and a trainer and, someone who knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, you have all the answers. But
they may have many.
Yeah.
May have
I think that's
perspectives or multiple perspectives. I don't know. Human beings, right? Human beings.
The brain is the most complicated organ, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
You can't even commit to that. Jeez.
That's how complicated my brain is.
Yeah. It's just like, well, maybe, but maybe not, Alex.
Well, I don't know. I never studied the brain.
Yeah. But you could still have an opinion on whether or not the brain is the most complicated organ. No one's going to write you a letter. The Brain Association of America isn't going to be like, Dr. Steve, we heard what you said. I want to back up. I appreciate you sharing your journey, your story, because when I was listening to you talk about obesity and that part of your life, mm-hmm. So I felt it registered with my experience with mental health, because mm-hmm. a lot of people now, they look at me and they're like, dude, you're totally normal. You seem happy. You seem successful. Mm-hmm. And I haven't talked about it on this podcast. I've sort of alluded to it, but there was a period in my life, I was very, very anxious and I was dealing with a lot, and I was not talking to anyone about it. I was having panic attacks all the time. Mm-hmm. There was a period of my life where I was just very, very depressed, mm-hmm. and I carried a lot of sadness and isolation and loneliness. And I probably don't communicate that very well today, but I mean,
you probably don't communicate that you have carried that.
Yeah.
There was a period of your life like that.
Yeah. People probably wouldn't pick up on it, but someone might ask, well, how did you deal with it? Because I talk about, the dissociation and panic attacks and kind of fear of dying and all that mm-hmm. stuff. And I think at one point someone was like, well, that seemed like a lot. How'd you deal with it? And for a very long time, I didn't deal with it. And, when you get to that every day feeling so awful and feeling so alone, you just immediately start looking okay, well, what are ways out, so to speak? And having that period of my life where it was very serious to me and only to me, it's something I still carry some shame about. And that's why it's so fascinating to hear you talk about your story, where it's people look at me and they're like, well, no way, that was part of your...
Got it all put together.
Yeah.
It's past you. Mm-hmm.
And I feel similarly in that regard, because it's nobody here knows, aside from two therapists in my life, the extent to which I knew, not to sound dramatic, but darkness and isolation and fear and sadness.
Alone.
Yes. The extent to the isolation that I felt in my younger years, I still scars me. I still feel scarred. I feel comfortable saying that. I feel I'm walking with a limp to this day.
So it's a little different right now, because it's a little different, but it's still there.
Yep.
Right. It's almost like that amputee that's like, yeah, I used to have an arm.
Yep.
But it's
definitely.
I have this reminder that I don't have an arm. But I've become functional. I've got this new prosthesis that helps me. I've got this new way of doing things. But yeah, this is a part of me.
Yes.
And I imagine that most of us have something like that. That's a major part of our journey, our story, or it's something that we're actively dealing with. Like for me, I identify with actively dealing with it, but not quite like it was when I was a younger kid and had a different developmental understanding of the world, and was in the middle of being obese.
Yeah. The Things They Carried, that's what just pops in my head. That's a book, right? I think it is. I had to read it in high school. I don't know if it has anything to do with the subject. It was about the Vietnam War. I don't know if it has anything to do. It was The Things They Carried. But, yeah. I sometimes wonder if a lot of the anger that I still feel, the emotion of anger that pops up, like if this kind of all harkens back to this. I mean, it's not a wound, it's healed, right? But sometimes wounds heal, but they kind of leave them.
Scar tissue.
Yeah, like you still have some pain or you can't move as well. And, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I am grateful for the progress that I have been able to make. And therapy was a huge part of that. But, yep, there was.
So when you talk about progress, I mean, through our conversations, I know that you have gone to a lot of therapy. You're pretty open about that. When you think about, I don't know what number of session this is going to be, number of,
Do you want to know? Is it important to you that you know?
I'm about to flip you off. No, I want to know what, this is not unlike therapy where I would say, what are you getting out of our work here? What do you get out of these podcast therapy sessions?
Well, obviously you threw one right over the plate, but it's too easy of a joke to make, so I'm not even going to bother making it, which would be nothing, right? Yeah, that would be just right over the plate. I have gained perspective. I think what has been the most helpful for me is talking about things with George, talking about those same things with you, and comparing the two responses.
Battling therapists.
Yeah, I'm pitting you two.
Dueling pianos.
Yeah, I'm pitting you two against each other. You don't even know it.
Yeah.
But seeing those different perspectives is helpful for me because it reinforces this idea that, like, there's no right answer. So you've helped me, you personally, not to toot your horn here, have helped me appreciate this idea of mastery, right? Because that's a term. I'd always been aware of the subject, right, and the concept, but having a word, it's like, okay, I have I can work on acceptance.
Yeah.
And seeing different perspectives in regards to therapy has hammered that home with this idea of like, dude, there's no right answer. There's a million answers.
Right.
And we're all figuring it out. The key is really being able to acknowledge things that occur, accept that they occur, and being okay with how you feel as opposed to looking for affirmation from someone, which is something that I do a lot. And I think our work together too has helped me to be like, okay, who gives a shit what Dr. Steve thinks? It's important. Like, what do I think? So that's been cool. I also have enjoyed learning more about like the work that you do. That's just been cool and fascinating for me.
The work that I do as a therapist?
Yeah.
Yep. Like my approach and how I think about things.
And stuff you study. That's why I asked you on the phone too, like, things you're studying. Like when you talk to me about ambiguous loss, like that's fascinating. Obviously it's relevant too.
Yeah.
But that's super fascinating and that's been helpful. And then in one of our recent sessions, you talked about that guy who, like, scientist versus a lawyer.
Yeah.
That stuff's really interesting and helpful. But yeah, one thing that I think about a lot, which you picked up on this, was I threw out that term like oh, Dr. Steve, you're a little old school.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking about that as I walked to lunch. I still maintain that it's been a nice change of pace for me. Like, you're kind of like, I don't know if you feel this way, but you're kind of a tough cookie.
I don't know what that means.
It means, you just...
Like an oatmeal cookie? The raisins are hard and
no, it's just a tough cookie. Like, you push back.
Okay.
Which I don't get a lot of. And I think that's good. Yeah, sometimes it makes me angry. But other times I think whether or not it makes me angry, it still reinforces this idea of like, well, why do I care what he thinks? In a different way of phrasing it.
Or why do I experience it as pushback? Or why do I...
Yeah. Challenging a thought doesn't have to necessarily be pushback. So yeah. Those are all the things that I have been gathering from our work together. Aside from all of the sponsorship money.
Right.
Just the cash flowing in.
The lucre.
Yep. Very lucrative business, podcast therapy. I'm like the Carnegie of podcast therapy. Yeah. So it's been good. Do you feel like I've been making improvement? Have you noted on your chart, like, okay, Alex seems...
That's one of the things I don't do is I don't keep notes of our work.
Do you keep notes of...
Yeah, typically. I write down things that remind me of conversations. Like if I were charting, if I was doing notes on our work, I'd say discussed ambiguous loss and mastery today. Or Alex shared, story about his, from his youth about drinking. And or talked a little bit about his folks and their expectations, or focus on dissociation, what that means for Alex. So those are things I would probably put in notes, but my notes are fairly brief like that, bullet pointed, kind of just things to remind me about our conversation.
I've always wondered, as a patient, like, what is the purpose of the note taking? Is it just to look for patterns and or is it to look, okay, here's how frequently he's talking about it. It must be important to him.
I think for me, mostly reminding me of what we talked about last time.
Yeah.
Or like if there are, hey, we talked about, remember my Uncle Joe? Like, I don't remember Uncle Joe. So
let me check my notes.
Can I go check my notes?
Yeah.
So did we talk, did Uncle Joe rise to the note? Was he noteworthy?
But it's not.
Sorry, Uncle Joe.
It's not the cliched, is exhibiting signs of
some people
schizophrenia.
Some people do.
Okay. I've always been curious what goes on.
I think there's a lot of mental health professionals who are worried that their notes will be used in ways that they can't even comprehend if something goes where we need to show our notes to a legal professional.
Yeah.
And so I think people are
a little guarded
in how they present that. I've taught ethics courses before, and one of the main questions I get in the ethics class is, can I get sued if, fill in the blank?
Wow.
And the reality is in our system, you can get sued.
Yeah, it's America.
It's America. Anybody who gets a lawyer to sue them can get you sued, So all you need is somebody who's willing to take your money and write up a
not to throw us off course, but there is a lawsuit that I find particularly amusing, and two guys are suing Universal Studios. Universal Studios made a film. I think it was called it was about the Beatles, or it was recent. It's in the last 5 years. In the trailer for the film, they had an actress. I'm going to mispronounce her name, but it's like Ana de Armas or something. She most recently played Marilyn Monroe in a remake. But this actress was in the trailer. The actress was not in the final movie. Mm-hmm. So when these two guys went to rent the movie on Amazon Prime, thinking she was in it, they're like, well, where was she? They paid $3.99 to rent the movie on Amazon. They're suing Universal Studios for $5 million for false advertisement. I love America so much. I hate America, but I love America.
Are they going to win?
They most likely... who knows? They technically they'll settle.
Settle out of court.
And yeah. Probably make a couple $100,000. Yeah.
And the lawyers benefit.
Everybody wins.
Except Universal.
Well, they don't deserve to win.
And Marilyn Monroe's estate.
Yeah. Well, it's just the actress who played her. Marilyn Monroe has nothing to do with that lawsuit. So, yeah, I can only imagine how guarded I never had considered that. How therapists must feel in terms of like, am I going to get sued? Yeah, I'd be worried about that all the time. Especially if you're like in charge of, quote unquote, in charge of someone's like wellness or mental health. Mm-hmm. They might be like, well, you know, I feel awful. This is your fault. I'm suing you for emotional damage.
Yeah, that's a concern.
That gives me an idea. Just kidding. I won't sue you. Yeah. So feeling a little sleepy.
Yeah. Well, maybe we call this one right here.
Yeah. We could. Well, we shall. Has this been beneficial? Let me just flip the question on you. Are there things that you've taken away from this, from providing me counsel a podcast?
So one of the things, I think I've said this before, one of the things that I get from you in particular is an orientation toward mental health, which is not just, which is more like a mental fitness orientation. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, I go to the gym or I wake up and I ride my bike or I, you know, go for a run or, like I have an orientation toward a physical fitness that I want to be doing something every day or something on a regular basis. My approach to mental health treatment in the past has been more like most people probably don't need that every week, every day, like I talked early on about having therapeutic experiences, but not necessarily having to be in therapy. And I think one of the things that's been eye-opening to me or has been more normalized to me through our work has been, it's okay to have a weekly therapy appointment and just go because that's part of my gym workout. That's part of my mental and emotional well-being workout. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't know. I just need to know that I have this place where I can go and I can talk and I can be myself.
Be heard.
And some weeks it's like the podcast. Some weeks it's like, it's kind of flat. We talked about plateauing and stuff like that.
This podcast is never flat. Just want to clarify that.
And so that's been one of the things that's been eye-opening to me. The other thing is, to talk about dissociation, which I admittedly don't know a ton about it. I mean, I know when people talk about in traumatic experiences, they have dissociative events or experiences where my body goes somewhere else.
Yeah.
People who get sexually abused talk about, it was like I was observing this happening to this thing. It wasn't me. I was somewhere else. So I get that, but I don't know dissociation the way you've talked about it before about feeling like a part of me is missing and that being an omnipresent experience that you have. So that's always in the back of my mind. Like since talking about it, it's been always in the back of my mind about, okay, so how does this impact how Alex shows up in a variety of ways in his life? So, our work together has given me some new perspectives on how to think about my work with people in general.
That's good.
And I feel like I really appreciate how hard it is to open up to somebody, and so for you to do this over the airwaves, so to speak, is impressive and scary, and so I appreciate that you do that.
That goes both ways.
I want to do it.
Yep. No, I appreciate. I mean, we talked about this too. Thank you for saying that, and that applies to you as well. I mentioned this in the first couple sessions. There were therapists who I approached and they thought they were in, and then they just hightailed it out of, because once the microphone's staring at you, and they probably were worried about, are they going to get sued?
I wouldn't blame them for that.
Yeah.
And I probably should be thinking more about I probably should have thought more about that.
We talked, I feel like, a little bit, and me having this safety net of
another therapist. Yeah. Battling therapist.
The dueling therapists. Yeah. I think for the ultimate episode will be to have you and George.
Yeah, maybe.
And a therapist off. I'll have to get another microphone.
You just said therapist off. I like that term.
I'm therapist off right now.
Fully aware of my emotional faculties, and I'm therapist off.
And on that note, we'd like to thank today's sponsor, which, what would be like, is there like a medication that makes you pee? That would be perfect.
That makes you pee?
Yeah, like, like some sort of, it's not like a diuretic.
So you're going dad joke on me.
Right? Yeah. Therapist. Okay. Well, what did you think with therapist off? I mean, that's what I was.
Just angry,
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, we will end it here. And thank you for...
this is going to be one of the ones I hear from my daughter about. Like, that was a...
No, I don't think so.
No?
We talked about... I mean, I felt... Maybe you didn't even pick up on this, but like I felt better sharing even that little bit about the amount of sadness that I carried when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. Like I don't talk about that ever.
Yeah.
And in the back of my brain, I was like, I don't think people are going to pick up on what you exactly mean. Because I know what I mean. I have memories,
mm-hmm.
things, concrete, specific memories that haunt me, So it's like just even dancing around that subject was therapeutic for me.
Okay, cool.
So take that, Dr. Steve's daughter. You're going to feel like a real jerk if you critique this episode after hearing that. Thank you for your time now, and see you next time.
Next time.
Okay, everyone, stay happy.